Hi YouTube and welcome back to my channel. Today is day 23 of Vlogmas. I've almost made it. I didn't know if I could make it, but I almost made it. So hang in with me for a couple more days and I will then give everyone a break from all of my ranting. Alright, so today I thought I would share some memories of favorite Christmas gifts that I got in the past. Because while, yes, my family was fairly poor and things, I did get some cool gifts over the years. You know, it just depended on whether or not my mom was working that year, and sometimes my uncle would give me cool gifts and stuff because he and my aunt were doing better financially than the rest of us were, and sometimes we would get cool gifts from my relatives in Germany. We got a lot of food gifts every year, as well as clothing, and I always got the coolest little sweaters and things. And one year my aunt in Germany handmade me a dirndl, which was really cute, and if I can find it, I'll put a photo up here of me wearing it. It was a red dirndl with a white apron. And my grandmother actually sent her all of my measurements, and then I think my grandmother must have made the measurements like much earlier in the year because I don't even remember her taking my measurements, but she did, obviously. And then she sent the measurements on to my aunt, who hand made the entire dirndl, everything, the blouse, the whole dress and the apron and everything, so it fit me perfectly. And I believe because I didn't grow very much at that age, so I think I was actually able to wear that for like up to 2 years. I was actually able to wear it for a long time. And then she made me another one when I was 15, I believe. And again, if I can find it, I'll put a photo up of me. And that one is kind of a dark purple with a lighter purple apron. And then the thing she didn't make was the blouse. I actually, when I went to visit in Germany, because I had the dirndl for many years, but I could never wear it because I didn't have a proper blouse to wear under it. It's called a Trachtenbluse. It's this very specific kind of blouse that is designed to be worn under a dirndl. For children, it's a standard blouse. Just the difference is the type of buttons it has. But then for adults, a Trachtenbluse, the blouse actually only goes down to about here, and so it just kind of ties down here. And then the one I ended up getting when I visited in 2001, it has the sleeve, like it has a puffy sleeve, but it's gathered right at the shoulder, and the one I ended up getting fit me just absolutely to a T. But it was like $100. It was not a cheap blouse, but it was well worth it because it's practically like tailored to me in terms of where it hits on my shoulder. And so where the dirndl, because the dirndl itself is sleeveless, and the dirndl hits right in the middle of where that gathering is, so you can see a little bit of it peeking out, and it looks really cool. And if I do put a photo up, I don't know if you can see that level of detail on it or not, but it's pretty cool. And then Trachtenbluse always have these cool little metal buttons. And in fact, my grandmother had, I actually still have it, what's called a Trachtenkostüm, which is a full, or and wearing it is called wearing Tracht. But her Trachtenkostüm, it was a skirt. So it's all wool. It's all handmade wool. Well, not handmade wool, but it's woven from wool, and then the cloth is then all handmade into the clothing. And she actually had hers custom made from when she got to visit Germany and visit her old flame that she was reunited with after 40 years, almost 50 years of being separated. And he was a very wealthy man, and so he actually had this Trachtenkostüm made for her. And I remember her being very proud of the the outfit. And it's really cool. It's a dark green, kind of a hunter green wool, and it comes with this cute little jacket. And it has a Trachtenbluse that goes with it, and then a skirt. It's a pleated skirt. It's not fully pleated. It's an A-line skirt, and it has some pleats in it, which it's typical of the style of the region, which is a sort of southern Germany and northern Austria type area, because it's kind of like a Tyrol or Bavarian style of Tracht. And I can't wear the skirt. I have never been able to wear the skirt. My hips and especially my thighs, because my grandmother was more proportional and her thighs were not wider than her hips like mine are, and my thighs have always been wider than my hips regardless of my weight, and in order to fit into that skirt, I think I'd have to be like 130 pounds or something, and I'm just way bigger than that, so that's not gonna happen. But the jacket actually fits me, which is kind of cool, and the blouse fits me. So, like on top, I'm the right size, but at the bottom, just forget about it. So I've actually, in the past, I have worn the blouse and the jacket, and and it also comes with a choker, which is really cool. It's a velvet choker, and it matches in color to the jacket, so it's kind of like that hunter green, and then hanging from it is a heart locket. And the color of the locket is kind of it's not silver, it's definitely more like a nickel, but it's a silverish color, but it's not pure silver. It's not that light color of silver, but it matches the color of the buttons on the blouse, which is kind of cool. And so the whole ensemble kind of goes together. And so I can, from the waist up, I can wear Tracht. It's from the waist down that I can't. I could always go back to Germany and get a skirt or trousers or something made, fit for me. But I haven't been back since 2007. My husband and I went and visited, and just, it's so expensive just to fly over there these days. So yeah, I don't think I'm gonna fly over there just to complete the ensemble. So yeah, those are actually some of my holiday memories. The getting the dirndls and my grandmother getting the Trachten costume as a gift, which is cool. But in terms of toys, and some of these I'm pretty sure were hand-me-downs that we got from the church. Some of these my mom might have bought, and a lot of them my mom played with just as much as I did. So I'm thinking almost like, yeah, she bought it for me so she could play with it. But one year I got a talking Viewmaster. So if you have ever heard of the Viewmasters, they almost resemble the Oculus Rift, not Oculus Rift, but Oculus, the VR goggles and things. It's not it wouldn't be a full goggle that you put on your head, but it's something that you hold up to your eyes and you look through two lenses and you get to see this whole picture. And I think they were slightly 3D, or at the very least they seemed to have some depth to them and stuff. But that was like kind of a really early precursor to virtual reality in many ways. And so you had the viewer, and then you had these discs, and the discs had it was kind of like almost like a slideshow, where you would pop it into the Viewmaster, and then you'd look at the picture, and then you'd click, and then you'd see the next picture and that kind of thing, and it would kind of tell a story. The one that I had was Talking Viewmaster, which was it was like this big. It was so instead of just a little goggly thing, it was a pretty substantial thing, and it was kind of heavy. I remember very often just having it on the ground and then laying on my stomach on the ground and using it, just because it was pretty heavy to hold. But those ones, the discs, instead of just having the little slideshow pictures in them that would get enlarged through the lenses of the Viewmaster, it also had a little vinyl record album. It was a clear plastic little audio album, but it looked like a little mini like 45, not even, it was smaller than a 45, because the discs themselves were about this big. They were kind of like a heavy cardboard, and had notches in them, and you had, you know, the see-through, like slideshow, like slides, like I don't know how to say it other than if you ever saw slide projector slides, that they were these little rectangles where if you hold them up to the light, you could actually see the picture. The light would just shine right through it, and that's how the projector worked. You stick in the projector, it would shine light through the image, and then through a lens that would enlarge it onto a screen. And this was kind of like a miniature version of that with little tiny little pictures like that big. And then you stick it in the Viewmaster and put it up to your face, and all of a sudden you were surrounded almost by this image. And so, like I said, it's very early precursor to what we think of VR today in a way. In fact, I have an Oculus Gear VR that came with my Samsung phone, my smartphone, and wearing that and playing with that reminds me a lot of using the Viewmaster when I was a kid. Just, you know, just more, you know, the graphics are better. Well, in those days it was just basically a photo slideshow was literally all it was. And with the talking Viewmaster, like I said, it had like a little, basically like a record album on the back, and every time you would advance the slide, there was a button in the back that you could use to play the audio, and it would play the little audio piece that went with that particular picture. And so it would tell you, it wouldn't just show you the story, it would tell you the story as well. So that was kind of cool. And I remember my mom had, if I remember right, that the talking Viewmaster itself was a hand-me-down, but then my mom went out and bought like a whole stack of discs, and the discs actually came in, they looked like albums almost in terms of the size of them. They're just a little thicker, and then you slide out a plastic tray, and there were, I think, 4 or 6 of these discs in them, and you just kind of go in order to retell the story. We had like some Walt Disney stories, and I think we had a Grizzly Adams one, and maybe a Little House on the Prairie one. So there were a whole bunch of them out there, and that one was probably the kind of highest end in terms of types of Christmas gifts I ever got, where that was actually kind of a pretty fancy schmancy thing. Although I don't recall if we actually paid for it or if it was just a hand-me-down and then we just bought additional discs to go with it. Another year I got something called a magical musical thing. So that one was kind of cool, and actually my mom bought me, and it was one of the years where she was actually doing pretty well financially with work and everything. But this thing, it was, I don't know, about yay long, and it had a long slender neck on it, and then it kind of it extended out to where because it kind of had a little bit of a speaker on one end, and it kind of came in and extended out. And along the neck of it were these multicolored buttons. Well, it wasn't really buttons. It was like it was a smooth surface, and each button was kind of like it was kind of painted on. Well, not painted on, but it was plastic, and it was part of this long strip. And it was arranged kind of like a piano in terms of where, you know, like with the piano, it has one row that's all white keys, and it has 3 and 2 and 3 and 2 black keys on the other row. Well, this was like, I think one row was all solid, just a bunch of different buttons, and each one had a specific number on them, and it also had a color. So the whole thing looked kind of like a rainbow, which was kind of cool. But each button had a different color, and each button had its own number on it. And there was one row, like I said, like a piano, where the buttons were all next to each other, and then there was another row of buttons where they were arranged in a 3-2, 3-2 pattern, just offset from the other ones. So, like I said, very much like a piano. And you held it almost like a guitar. So, like I said, it was a magical musical thing. it wasn't really magical. It was just like you press down on the surface of the thing, and even though they weren't physical buttons that you would push in, it had a contact between the surface and what was underneath it, and it would then sound out a tone. And it wasn't a stereo kind of sound. It was a very mono sound, but it would send out a tone, a specific tone, out of the speaker on the one end, the kind of the bulbous end of it. And then it came with a music book with a bunch of songs in it, and you literally just had to follow the color and or the number to hit the right notes to play the song, and eventually you could memorize and not need the pictures in order to play the song, and it would tell you how long or short to hold the notes and that kind of thing. But you didn't have to know if it was a B flat or a C sharp or that kind of thing. So that was kind of fun. I've never been very musical, but it was still fun to play around with that. Let's see, other things. Of course, one of my longtime favorite toys were Legos. Now, I didn't always get Legos, but like some years I would get larger kits, and some years my grandfather always tried to get me Legos, even if we weren't doing too well. And sometimes I would get like the little tiny box of Lego, where it would be like to build one car or one spaceship, one airplane, that kind of thing. And sometimes I would get larger ones and things like that. But I loved playing with that and just kind of building all sorts of different things, and I was very much into that. And I mentioned before that I did have like a Barbie doll. I had a Barbie skipper, and I had the old style of skipper. She must have been a hand-me-down because she was definitely the 1960s style skipper with brown hair, and she was kind of like the little sister and stuff, but she had brown hair and very kind of mod 60s clothing, so I'm thinking she was a hand-me-down. I don't think she was a new purchase when I had her. I did get a Grizzly Adams doll one year. I loved Grizzly Adams. It was one of my favorite shows back in the 70s. I had a lot of favorite shows back in the 70s though, but always loved Grizzly Adams. And the story of Grizzly Adams, just real quick, was, this guy, I think he was a city person, and he was falsely accused of something. I don't remember the full story, but he was falsely accused. He ran out into the country to evade going to jail because, again, falsely accused. And he is befriended by a bear that he actually rescues this little baby bear, and he raises him. And so the bear becomes a good companion of his. And then he also befriends a Native American tribe, and there's one of the tribe members becomes a really close friend of his as well. And then there's also the actor Denver Pyle. And he most people know him from Dukes of Hazzard as Uncle Jesse. I think that was his name, was Uncle Jesse, the guy with the white beard. That's what he's most famous for. But he was also the sort of the pain in the ass sort of friend of Grizzly Adams. So I remember him from that first. And so I somehow ended up with a Grizzly Adams doll, and one of my fond memories of that is I lost. He came with, he's got the whole lumberjack look and everything, and he's got one arm like this, and he had an axe to put in it, and basically, so his arm starts like this, and you press a button in the back of his back, and he just goes like this, and obviously you just keep doing this until you can chop wood with the axe. Well, if you lose the axe, he's just got his hand like this. And that looks like Hitchhiker. So I would pretend he was a hitchhiker, and I would always start his arm down and like, okay, I'm hitchhiking. I had a silly imagination. The other thing I used to do is have Grizzly Adams kidnap Barbie and have because I had Donnie and Marie dolls, Donnie and Marie Osmond dolls as well, and Donnie would be the prince and come in and rescue Barbie, and poor Marie had to sit off on the sidelines because I didn't have anything for her to do. So there's that. I'm trying to think of any other favorite toys. Like I said, my grandmother did keep trying to give me dolls and stuff. I got a baby doll one year. I still have her. Never wanted a baby. So she's still pretty pristine because I didn't really play with her very much. Let's see. Always wanted Matchbox and Hot Wheels cars, but I wasn't allowed to play with those because those were boys' toys, and I was not a boy as much as I had wanted to be, but you know, be that as it may. I can't go back in time and change that one. Oh yes, when I don't know if I was 12 or 14 at the time, but I have mentioned this one before, where my uncle gave me, and he actually gave me this as a Christmas gift, but it was originally his, so it was a hand-me-down. But it was a Texas Instruments, the TI-99 4A computer, and it was you could actually get a monitor for it, or you could hook it up to your TV, and you could play video games with it, or you could use it had word processing and spreadsheets and all sorts of things. So it was a proper computer. And I had the TI Invaders, so their version of Space Invaders game that I used to play, and that one was actually a lot of fun to play. And so I played that for endless hours, and I had no other software that went with this computer. And they stopped making the software, and my uncle either lost or threw out all the other software, so that's the only thing I ever had was the TI Invaders. Although one of the things you could do with it was it had a small amount of internal memory, so you didn't have to save everything to software. And so I was actually able to practice some of my basic programming. And when I say basic, it's like capital BASIC, basic programming. That was the name of the programming language. And I was learning that in high school. I was a president of the computer club, and the sponsor, so the teacher who was sponsoring our club, was teaching us how to write in BASIC. And I actually wrote a 30-question geography quiz in BASIC, where it would ask a question, and I actually had to figure out, so ask a question, put in the answer, and there was no such thing as accepting different spellings and stuff. You had to spell everything correctly and capitalize everything correctly. So it would penalize you for spelling mistakes and everything else. And so if you didn't input the correct answer, it would just pop you back to the question and say, yep, that's wrong. You know, and it would keep asking you that same question until you got it right, and then it would move you on to the next question. And so it just kept looping like that until the end, and then once you were done, it would... I don't think I ever did get it to... Well, you can't get it to score anyway, because it wouldn't let you advance until you completed each question. So by the end of it, you would have answered all 100%, otherwise you wouldn't have finished the quiz. Although thinking back on it now, I'm like, gee, I wish I had done that. But, you know, I actually tried to look up writing BASIC on my current Windows box. And, like, well, I mean, I could write it in pretty much any software, you know, tool that I have, but I can't find anything that will not render, but execute the program. I mean, you can write the code, but you need okay, my brain is just not working today. But there's something you have to run the code through in order for it to perform the actions of the code. And I don't have that, and I can't find one for Windows. So I'm like, darn it. I mean, it's ancient tech, and it's very likely that no one's compiler, that's it. Run it through a compiler, I think, is the right term for BASIC. And I can't compile the code, so oops. Oh well. Alrighty, so yeah, that's pretty much everything in terms of kind of cool, fun Christmas gifts that I remember getting as a kid. It wasn't a ton of things, like I said, you know, you know, when you're growing up with with poverty, sometimes, you know, you're excited just to get a new pair of socks. There were some years where there was like always a big pile of gifts under the tree for me, and half of them would have either underwear or just a note saying, "Ha, sorry, gotcha." I got that quite a bit. I'm like, okay, thank you very much. Alrighty, so tomorrow is Christmas Eve. And I am having friends over for Christmas dinner. I always do Christmas dinner on Christmas Eve. So either my video tomorrow is going to go up ridiculously early, or it's not going to go up until Christmas Day after my friends go home. So be warned that tomorrow's either going to be, you know, it's just not going to show up until the next day, or it's going to be really early. So regardless, one way or the other, I will try and get a video up, and then I'll do another one for Christmas Day, and then I will take a break until the new year. So thanks for joining me again, and until tomorrow, take care. Bye-bye.